that's all from the 20th of May 2019. There's the SI units, and next to them are going to be ghost units, ghost constants, constants of nature. Each unit will be associated with something about the world that we think is a constant. Okay, so to summarize this new SI, it'll be called the new SI for a year, but then after that we've got to go back to calling it the SI again. Those are the rules. And it builds the SI, the international system, on the units, on the most stable things that people have ever encountered in the world, and that's the natural constants. It removes any uncertainty from the definition of the units. There'll always be uncertainties in how the units are realized out in the real world, but over time we should be able to work on that and reduce that. And the reason we're doing it, since we're spending your money doing it, you should be interested in the reason, is about the future of measurement. So any of you who have ever had work done on your foundations of your home, so maybe your home has done a little bit of jiggling, or maybe even worse, it's developed a crack, it's very, very expensive to work on the foundations. And once you've worked on the foundations and you've put things right, what you have is absolutely nothing to show for it, except you've got confidence that your house is not going to do that again. And the work we're doing here is building for the future. It's for the future of the system of units. It's laying the foundations for a century or more of precision measurement. Okay, that's the end. Thank you.
Actually, it always makes me laugh when I hear that introduction, and I'm introduced as the professor for the public understanding of science, because I think everyone expects that I must know the whole of science, and here I am to explain it to the Royal Institution. And certainly when I took over this job, a lot of journalists really did expect that I knew it all, and I'd get phone calls from journalists just asking me to explain every bit of science out there. I remember one particular occasion, we just had the Nobel Prizes announced over the last week, and I remember the Nobel Prize in Medicine had just been announced, and this journalist phoned me up and said, yeah, just been announced for the discovery of telomeres. Could you tell me what a telomere is? And I thought, well, I'm afraid biology is not my strong point, so I'm very embarrassed to admit that I was in fact in front of my laptop at the time, and I quickly pulled up the Wikipedia page for telomeres, and then read very quickly and confidently told the journalist, yes, there's a piece at the end of DNA which controls how long the DNA will last, and the journalist seemed quite happy, but I realised at that point, well, this is crazy, you know, I can't be expected to know it all. Actually, you know, who was the last scientist that probably did know all the science that was around at the time? I mean, maybe Newton or Galileo, but certainly Newton, the explosion of science that happened post-Newton means that probably after that there wasn't a scientist that really could say that they knew all the science that was known at the time. But it sort of got me thinking, actually, about the question of whether, or could science know it all? Not one scientist, but could there come a point where science might know it all? Or might there be questions that, by their very nature, will always be beyond the power of science to know? So that's what I've been on a kind of journey for the last 3 years, trying to articulate whether there are any questions that, by their nature, might be beyond the ability of science to be able to answer them. So this is what I want to tell you a little bit about, this 3-year journey I've been on, culminating in this book, What We Cannot Know. I think that kind of expectation that science might know it all is partly fueled by the fact that every time you open the newspaper there seems to be another extraordinary discovery that we've made. And certainly since I took over this job, the sort of things that we have discovered are absolutely extraordinary. We landed a spaceship the size of a washing machine on the side of a comet. We've managed to create robots which have made their own language. They're communicating with each other, and we actually don't know what this language is. Machine learning has given them the power to create their own language. We've got to interact with these robots to understand what it is they're talking about. We sequenced the DNA of a 50,000-year-old cave girl, and we're starting to use stem cells to repair the pancreas of diabetic patients. So it is kind of extraordinary just how much we know, and I think it's given us that expectation that, well, yeah, maybe science might come to a point where we can answer all the big questions about the universe. And I think that desire to know is incredibly basic in us. I think it's almost as basic as the desire to reproduce. It's sort of what has helped us in our evolutionary survival. And actually, I start the book with a quote from Aristotle, from Metaphysics. He declares at the opening of the book, "Everyone by nature desires to know." But I think it's probably very dangerous at any point in history to declare, well, we're never going to be able to answer this, because it's quite difficult to know what it is that's just going to be round the corner. I mean, when is there going to be a new Einstein which completely revolutionizes our kind of perspective on the universe? So I kept a few stories in mind just as a warning to me about declaring that there's a question we will never be able to answer. One of my favourites was Auguste Comte, who in 1835 very confidently declared, "We shall never be able to study by any methods the chemical composition of stars." And, you know, it seems dug a bit out of it and being able to chemically analyse it. But of course what Auguste Comte hadn't reckoned on was, well, actually, although we haven't visited a star, every night the star visits us. So the light from the star, several decades later, scientists are able to analyse, and we have a very complete description of what stars are made out of. So I kept this as a kind of little warning story to me that to declare that something cannot be known is like a red rag to most scientists. So, of course, you know, I'm not the first to kind of consider questions of unknowns. One of our famous 21st century philosophers, Donald Rumsfeld, very famously summed up states of knowledge in this very cryptic answer that he gave to questions about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He declared, "There are known knowns. There are the things that we know that we know. We also know that there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. Those are the ones we don't know and he got given the Foot in the Mouth Award by the Plain English Speaking Society for this response, which I think is actually really unfair, because I think this is a fantastic description of different states of knowledge. The known knowns, the things that we have discovered, and in fact the book is very much about the things we know and how we know them and how they've changed, how our view of the universe has changed. So this is very much a book trying to understand how we know the things that we do know. The unknown unknowns, well, they're very exciting. They're the things I can't tell you about because they are unknown. They're a bit like those black swan events, the things which just come out of nowhere and completely change your perspective on the universe. So those are the exciting things for science, but by their nature, I can't tell you about those. So I'm after, in this book, actually trying to pin down the known unknowns, and not the things that we don't know now we might know. Are there things that will always remain unknowable? Actually, I think Donald Rumsfeld missed a category here, which are the unknown knowns. which actually, as Slavoj Žižek pointed out, are fairly significant for a politician, because they're your kind of Freudian beliefs, your delusions, the things that you deny that you know, but actually drive all your decisions. So maybe he missed one category here. But I'm after these known unknowns that might remain always unknowable. Now, one of the other motivations for this journey I've been on for the last 3 years is also partly to do with the person that I took over this job from, a certain Richard Dawkins, who, as well as talking a lot about evolutionary biology, spent a lot of the latter end of his professorship talking not about science, but talking about religion. The God delusion got him into a lot of arguments with various theologians. So I kind of braced myself when I took over this job. Questions not just about telomeres and science, but for questions about my religious beliefs. So I actually prepared a little response to them, because I sort of wanted to put a little bit of distance from that debate and to move back to sort of the public understanding of science. So actually, when journalists would ask me this question, I would say, actually, just declare that I'm a deeply religious man. And they were quite shocked by this, quite excited. And before they got too excited, I went on to explain that my religion is the Arsenal Football Club. And every Saturday I go and worship my idols at the Emirates, formerly Highbury Stadium. Every season I reaffirm my faith that this will be the season that we win the Premiership. And each season my faith seems to be tested at the moment. But do we have any Spurs fans in the audience? Oh, look, they're on the front row here. Well, at least we have a very good Saint Totteringham, who always ensures that Arsenal are above Tottenham in the Premiership by the end of the season. It was a very late arrival by our Saint this year, because it was the last day that he actually came and made sure that we ended up at the top. So that was my religion. Many journalists were happy with that, but some were a little bit more persistent. Said, no, come on, okay, what are your beliefs? And I remember especially one Sunday morning on Northern Ireland BBC Radio on a philosophy and religion programme. So Northern Ireland's Sunday morning, religion isn't too far from people's thoughts. And I decided to go on this programme, and I said, well, I'm very happy to talk about the philosophy of science, but I really want to stay clear of the religion questions. And the journalist seemed quite happy, and the little light went red, and we went live, and then he went, so Marcus, do you believe in God? Oh no, sorry, that was a dreadful Northern accent. I won't do those anymore. So, you know, the agreement went out the window immediately, and we went straight into a debate about the existence of God. So we had kind of quite heated to and fro, and at some point you see, actually as a mathematician, I spend a lot of time proving the existence of things, or proving that certain things cannot exist. For example, Andrew Wiles with Fermat's last theorem proved that solutions cannot be found for these equations. So actually we've got powerful tools to prove that things exist or they don't. But if you're a mathematician, you need a very clear definition of what it is you're trying to prove exists or not. So I pushed the journalists, and I said, okay, look, I'm prepared to engage my kind of logical mathematical mind on this, but I need a very clear definition of what it is you mean by God. So the journalist then said, but it's something which transcends definition. It's beyond the ability of the human mind to know. And I thought, well, you've just wiped me out of the game. How can we actually engage with that? And I sort of went away from the interview feeling a bit frustrated. But actually, it sort of worked on me, that idea of God as defined as the things we cannot know, the things which transcend our understanding. And so I began to sort of play with that as an interesting idea. Well, yeah, what are those things that we will never know? What sort of role might they play? Actually, as a God, actually a few years ago I took part in a debate with the chief rabbi during Jewish Book Week, and he wrote this wonderful book called Science and Religion, The Great Partnership, about how actually science and religion are involved in similar kind of trying to answer the big questions. And in preparation for that debate, I actually talked to a philosophy friend of mine at New College in Oxford, trying to prepare for talking to the chief rabbi. And this philosopher actually referred me to a very interesting theologian, Herbert McCabe. He was actually a Marxist theologian in Oxford. Get that? Quite cool, a Marxist theologian. He has a lot of strange texts on Christian liturgy and things like that. But there was one essay that I read which was very interesting because in it he makes the following statement. To assert the existence of God is to claim that there is an unanswered question about the universe. And actually he goes on to say that many religions committed iconoclasm, actually by giving this quite abstract idea far too many properties that it never should have had. And of course that's what we get served up as kids, this kind of rather silly version, and we reject it quite quickly. I certainly did when I came up to my comprehensive school, started learning a bit of science, and it just, the other thing didn't make sense at all. But maybe we throw too much out with that, and maybe there is still something interesting to tease out as kind of the unknowns. And of course they were always that God was those unknowns, volcanoes or earthquakes or things. And but as science has got to know more and more, that sort of unknown has got smaller and smaller. In fact, there's a term, the God of the Gaps, which you may have heard of, which actually was a derogatory term created by theologians, saying that, you know, science isn't kind of eliminating God, that we're meant to know God. So it was actually a derogatory term. But partly my mission in this book was just to explore whether we could reclaim the God of the Gaps as actually a positive thing, and whether it actually has some value. By identifying things that are beyond science, might they have something interesting to say about that idea? So I sort of kept that in mind as well on my journey into the unknown, to the edges and beyond. So the book I divided up into edges. I've got 7 edges of knowledge that I believe have perhaps potential for questions that might be beyond the world of science. So I want to give you a little bit of a guided tour, and we'll go into depth in a couple of them, and I'll show you some of the other challenges that I think are out there. I'm just going to start with the first edge, because that's very much at the heart of my own subject of mathematics, and this is the challenge of, can we know the future before it becomes the present? Can we predict what's going to happen next? And a lot of us want to do that. We really need to know in order to be able to plan what's going to happen next and make decisions. We would like to have that kind of knowledge. So is it possible to know what's going to happen next? Now, actually, on my journey to the edges of knowledge, I took with me an object in each edge. So each edge has an object associated with it, which kind of gives me a useful tool to kind of like tease out this particular challenge. So the object I took with me on my journey to the edge of trying to predict the future was an object which I think really sort of captures the idea of the unknowable, the unpredictable. It's a casino dice. I mean, the excitement of a dice is that we don't know what's going to happen when we throw it on the table. So this time I got a 6. But there's kind of feeling like, oh,